my faith is all leaning on God, because I'm like, okay, he's never disappointed me. Like, Christ has never disappointed me, because literally the day before a bill is due, or like the day before I have something due, it's like I get a job, or my husband gets a job, and it's like everything's taken care of. Yeah, I may not have extravagant things. I may not have like the latest tech or the latest this or that, but I know everything's taken care of. You know, like my family is okay, we're okay, and we're blessed. And I think too, as Americans, we're so used to being spoiled. Like, we don't realize how rich we are and how blessed we are, especially here in America. Like, that's one thing too, like my grandmother always blessed us. Didn't matter what she had, how much she had. She always made sure to teach us, like, even if it's something small, it comes from the heart. Like, if I'm giving you something, it's because I love you. Not because I just want to spoil you, but because I love you.
What's up, Savage Boss Babes and Dudes? It's Diana inside the Savage Studio. Once again, this episode brought to you by Savage Coffee, now located inside the Boeing Center at Techport. Hey, please welcome my next guest. This is Nina Olivares from Olive Party Creations. And I'm really excited to have you here with me. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be here in the studio and opening your heart and sharing your story with us, Nina.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited to get to meet and to know a little bit about the person behind all these beautiful balloon creations that I've seen you be able to participate in all over the city. I think the very first event that I saw you do was with Tejanas in Media.
Oh, yes.
That's actually where we met each other, and we started following each other, and from then it just took off. So I am really excited about getting to know how you started your business and what impulsed you to go down that route. But before we go down that route, let's take it to the very beginning. Tell us where you're from and where did you grow up?
Okay, so I am from Poteet, Texas. Well, I was born in San Antonio, but my parents moved out to Poteet when I was about 4 years old. And so I grew up, we call it the sticks, because there was really nothing out there but sticks when we first moved out there. And, you know, growing up in the country, it was pretty simple life, you know. You stayed out till it got dark, and my mom would call us in, all right, time for dinner. You know, it was kind of like that simple life. I was homeschooled, so that gave me even more time to, you know, be outside and learn. And I was a fast learner, so my mom, I think I made it easier for her because she really didn't have to teach me too much. She kind of taught me how to read, and once I knew how to read, I kind of just took off from there, and I literally would read every book that she would put in front of me. And so I remember her telling me I started reading before I was like 4 years old, and so it was always like something that I just loved to do.
Did you miss out on going to school with other children? Like, did you miss on and want to be able to be around other kids and recess and lunchtime with your friends and stuff like that? Or was the homeschooling something that you enjoyed?
Well, there was a point that I did go to public school. So I went to public school probably I started second grade, and then I guess she couldn't decide if she wanted me to stay in public school. And she was a little scared, I think, because I was her oldest kid. She was scared to put me in public school and scared that I wouldn't, you know, succeed, or, you know, I think she had a lot of doubts herself as a mom, as far as like teaching me. Little did she know I was like really ahead when they tested me and everything. They were like, oh, actually, she could be like in a grade above than what she's actually learning. My mom was like, no, just put her in the grade she's supposed to be in. Like, I guess she was scared that I wouldn't do good. But I did. And so she took me out for third grade, but then put me back in because she was like, no, like, you did good. Like, okay. Like, I guess she got over that fear. And so from fourth grade all the way up to eighth grade, I was in public school. So I did all the sports. I was social, you know. I got to experience all of that. And then came high school, she took me out again and homeschooled me. And I guess it was more to like she was afraid.
Where do you think that fear stemmed from?
I think
was it something that
of,
she had experienced?
Maybe so. I think it had a lot to do with her confidence. I think she had a lot of like trauma in her younger life that she never really talked about. She went through certain things as a teenager, and that was the same school that she went to school at as a teenager, and that's where she went to school, Poteet. And so I don't know if it had to do with that. Maybe she had stuff in her past that she never processed or never dealt with, to where she put that fear on me, like, oh no, like it's like I need to protect her, which I understand as a mom. But I was
Did you feel fearful yourself?
No. I was the opposite. I was like the more outgoing. Like I really didn't. I kind of just did my own thing. Yeah. Like
you're like, fear who?
Yeah, and it wasn't something that I ever thought of. Like, oh, actually, for me, school was easy. Like I always saw it as like it was so simple. I was used to homeschool where it was like a college setting at such a young age, to where I felt like homeschool was harder because I had to make myself concentrate and I had to have that self-discipline to do my schoolwork. Versus at school, it's like, okay, this class, 11 to 10, you got science. Other time frame, you got math. Like all of your subjects were already scheduled in for you. All your work was set aside for you. All the teachers are there just passing you a paper. You got to fill it out, basically. Yeah. So that's how I saw it. It was just worksheets, and it was so simple. And I would actually get in trouble sometimes because my teachers were like, all she does is fill them out real quick and then read her books. And I was like, well, I mean, it's not my fault. It's easy. So it's, for me, I was never afraid, and then when it came to sports, it was something that I loved. Like I was very athletic in middle school. So for me, that was my passion. Like I would just do my work just to pass so I could do sports, like basketball, especially. That was my favorite. And so for me, like when she removed me for high school, it was kind of like, man, like you took me away from my chances of fulfilling like what I loved to do the most, which was play basketball. But
so at this point, were you upset because you're this in and out kind of, right?
Yeah, I was
in and out of school and homeschool, and
yeah, I was upset for a while, and I kind of was upset too because I did create friendships from second grade all the way up to high school. So, and I still have some of those same friendships today. Like I still in contact with them, because it's kind of like our city was so small. There was only so many people you could socialize with.
Did it, and at any moment, did it provoke a conversation between your mom and yourself of why? Like what's your reasoning behind these decisions?
I think too, it like kind of made our relationship strenuous from that time on. Like, because now that I'm older, I still don't really have a good relationship with my mom. And I think it has a lot to do with communication. Like my mom's not very good at communicating. Like she's very in her thoughts. And instead of speaking her mind or saying how she feels, instead of, just stating like, oh no, this is this way because of this. Instead of, I feel like, you could talk to me more. It was more like, you just don't like me. And it was like, no, like I just was upset about this one situation. And so a lot of times it was hard to communicate with mom or talk to her about, okay, why did you do this? Like, why did you take me out early? Or why didn't she let me do sports? Or, different things like that. Because in her mind, it was like, no, I'm protecting you. I'm doing this.
But what was it in your mind? Like, how did you view what she was doing to you?
In my mind, I kind of viewed, I guess at that time, I didn't understand, Now that I'm older, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that she was trying to protect me as a mom, I guess, but it was an overbearing protection, like a helicopter mom. Yeah. And now I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be more understanding as I'm getting older for my mom, because I do, I love my mom. I care about her and stuff like that. And I know she loves me. She just doesn't have a good communication, a good way of saying what she feels or explaining, because it's very emotional for her. Like her emotions are either there's non-existent or totally taking over. And so I think that too, that's where like I'm trying to be different and very better
I was
at
just going to
communicating.
ask,
Yeah.
how did that relationship influence your character?
Yeah, so now that I'm older, for a long time I was very just more quiet. Like I was younger, just very quiet. I would just hide my feelings down. I would never talk about anything. Like if something bothered me, I would just kind of just, okay, just, shove it down, not deal with it. And now that I'm older, I'm just like, okay, I need to process things. I need to learn, especially after becoming a mom. You want to teach your kids how to process their emotions, not hide them.
Do you feel like what you were doing was unhealthy for you?
Yeah, I feel like I did do a lot of like unhealthy, almost like not emotional trauma in a way, but more of just not coping, or not processing how to go through life and deal with certain situations. It was more of just, okay, push it down, shove it, forget about it. Don't deal with it. Forget about it. And now it's like, especially my oldest daughter, she's getting in her teenage years. I'm like, okay, if something's bothering you, you need to say what's bothering you. Talk about it. Use your words. Like explain. Because yes, you're sad, you're angry, but I don't know what's causing that. Like, why are you upset? Why are you angry? Or, you're sad or you feel a certain way. It's okay to talk about it. Because I felt like as a child, I couldn't talk about things because
that's what you learned.
Yeah, like
no? I mean, in your home.
Yeah, like I couldn't talk about things or I couldn't be a certain way because my mom was being that way as an adult. Like her emotional state, I felt like a lot of times was what I should have been as a child. And so like the roles were reversed. And so my mom was very emotional growing up, especially if there was a situation where she felt like she was being targeted or she was being bullied or mean to, or, they're just being mean. And a lot of times it's like, okay, people are people. We have to learn to process things. We have to learn to deal with those emotions. Like we can't just break down and cry. And that's how I felt like my mom was. A lot of times she would just break down and cry for every situation. And it was like, okay, I can't cry because my mom's crying. So I'll just...
Somebody has to keep it together.
Yeah, and I felt that way. I have to keep it together, like, because I was the oldest. And so I always felt like, okay, I have to be the mom. Like, I have to be the strong one. I have to be tough. Like, I can't show my emotions. I can't deal with that. And so growing up, that was really hard to keep that, I guess.
Was there anybody else that you could talk to or that you did open up to or that you felt safe around talking about or opening up about your feelings?
I think my family was really good. Like I did have a close-knit family, but what was hard is my parents were part of a church that was, I guess you could say, has cultish mindset, like cultish opinions. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, if you don't go to our church, then we don't talk to you type thing. And so that's where that kind of separation stemmed from, that separation from our family. A lot of it had to do with my mom, like her and her mindset. Okay, they're not right, so we don't hang out with them. And as a kid, you're just...
Did you accept it at first? I mean,
it was more of like, I questioned a lot of things. I was very stubborn. Like my mom always called me a rebel growing up because I was always pushing the envelope of like, well, why this? Why do we do things like this? Or why is this like this? And why do you view it like that? Always questioning her. And I think that's too where that strain on our relationship came from, because I always questioned everything.
I feel like especially in households where Mexican households. You know, that's like not something that you do. Question your parents, like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? You know,
Exactly.
Like what your parents say is what goes, and you don't have to be questioning it. You just do what they tell you, and that's it. And you were totally the opposite.
And I was totally the opposite. And I think God created me that way for a specific reason, because growing up, I always questioned everything. I was very like, not that I had trust issues, but I wanted to know the reason why.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, okay, why is this way? Like, why is everything? And that's how I am for everything. Like, it's just who I am. And I think that's what made me be different, because like my family, they always tell me, oh, you're so different, Nina. Like I'm so proud of you. You broke through that. And in my mind, I'm like, what did I break through? Like, what am I so different? But now that I'm older and I see I guess like generational curses of where my mom started something, and it was like that, don't question anything, just follow along the lines, go along and kind of just be a people pleaser, I guess you would call it, but still at the same time enclosed into this cultish mindset of, so-called Christianity. And so I think that for me is where I was different. Like, I'm like, I questioned, because it was like, okay, if God really loved us and he died on the cross for us, why are we being judgmental to other people that make mistakes or other people that sin? He did that for us. He didn't care what we were doing. He did it because he loved us and he wanted a way for us to make heaven our home. Not, oh, I'm going to judge them. And no, he loved us. And so that's how we show people what true Christianity is loving them. And that's something that I really didn't see growing up. My parents were Christians, but they were very judgmental. They were judgmental Christians. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I would have never wanted to be around you if you said you were a Christian. I'd be like, you're a Christian? Like, I would have never guessed that. But it was just because of the way they were, like the way they behaved sometimes around certain people. And it was like, people have different lifestyles, and if you don't agree with it, that's okay. But that doesn't mean you have to express that you don't agree with it, or kind of look down on them, and that's how I felt like my parents were with my extended family. They would look down on them like, oh, we're better than you because we go to this church. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, and I always saw that hypocrisy, and I think that's what made me question things even more. Was, why are you this way? If you read your Bible, you pray, why do you treat people this way? Or why do you behave this way? And so I think that too caused a lot of strife. And it's funny because it makes me think of like these memes and like these little quotes that you see, like there's always the oldest daughter that's starting trouble.
Yeah.
And that was me. I was always the one, oh, you're the troublemaker, you're the one, the rebel, the one starting everything, and you think you know everything. And it wasn't that. I think now I was breaking those cycles. Like, I wasn't going to become just person that just follows along blindly. And especially because I started seeing things in my own personal life once I got married, once I started having kids, and I eventually pulled away from that church. I pulled away from that whole, I guess, community and all
What
of
is
that.
it that you decided that you wanted for yourself and that you weren't finding there, that you said, you know what, I'm going to go look for it somewhere else because it's not here?
Well, so it started with my son, my oldest son. When I had my oldest son, he had a reaction to vaccines, and he was even on a delayed schedule, all of that. And I saw a change in him that completely made me question it. So at he was 8 months old. He was walking, talking, everything. Took him to get his 6 month shots because he was delayed. That same day, he never walked until he was like almost 2. And then his speech never returned. He didn't talk clearly until he was 4. Like he was talking, but it was gibberish. It was like just like mumbling, or it was you couldn't understand what he was saying.
And this was due to the vaccines?
I believe
a reaction
so.
to the vaccine?
Yeah, I believe so. Because it was so instant. It was like immediately, like within hours of him getting the vaccine. And so when I questioned that, because that's just who I am, I question everything. Immediately I was gaslighted, like, no, that couldn't be it. Couldn't be it. It has to be something else. And then, of course, like years passed, and I finally started getting courageous and was like, you know what, this was it. I believe this is what happened to my son, and, I'm going to say it. And because in that community, in that arena where I was raised, it was like, you don't question those things. You're not a doctor. But my intuition as a mom was telling me, no, this is why that happened. And so it was just my gut feeling. And so because I started questioning those things, a lot of people turned their backs on me.
Within that community?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much got to the point to where I would walk into the building and people would just stare at me and like whisper behind my back. And I would go to talk to people, and, friends that I thought I had for years no longer wanted to hang out with me. We'd invite them over for dinner. They always had excuses. It was like, oh no, this. And of course, like whenever I would try to tell my mom, like, man, this is happening. Like, I don't understand. Like, I just telling my story. And she's like, oh, well, maybe don't talk about that anymore. Or, are you sure that's why? And it's like, if I questioned the doctor, I asked the doctor, like, they said, if you even question it, we're not going to take you as a patient anymore. So if my doctor fired me for just questioning something, like, why would I? It just solidified it even more so for me, because it was like, I'm trying to find answers. Why? Like, why would this happen to my son? But nobody could explain it to me. If I even questioned, it was like I got shut down right away. And so it finally got to the point where the pastor preached a sermon based on us. He called my husband in the office and let him know, like, oh, I'm going to preach this sermon and it's because of you. Basically.
How did you feel after that? Or how did you feel after?
All of that was kind of like, okay, like I was really upset. I was very upset about it. I was very, like, I wanted to be emotional at the same time, but I had just had my daughter. She was about 2 months old. And so all those hormones and everything are still going on. And you're just like, okay, how do I process this? Like, am I angry? Am I shocked? Like, I really didn't know what I wanted to be at the time. I think I was just, my first reaction was to be upset and like hurt, because this is a community that I've grown up in my entire life. And so I was just very, confused. Like, why would you do this? And then they even went as far as to create a policy for one of their conferences that they had, that all your children had to be up to date on vaccines in order to be in the nursery. And so for me, I was like, I felt like that was like a shot at me, because it's like, okay, all of a sudden you create this new policy whenever I have the courage to say what happened to my son. And, I got told a lot of comments like, oh, your children could have diseases. Okay. So it was just stuff like that started happening until people got so brazen to where I remember I was in like a nursing room and there was other moms, and they started talking about me right in front of me. And like, if I wasn't even in the room. And that's where I kind of got, okay, you know what? Obviously, I'm not meant to be here anymore. Like, this isn't my home. This is not my place. I'm not welcomed here anymore. So at that moment, I kind of just shut down. Like, okay, I'm just going to be a mom. be myself, trying to figure out life now from then on, because it's like I've been raised in this community my entire life. Me and my husband were both raised in that fellowship. We met there. We got married there. We've had all our kids there. And it's kind of like you're cutting a cord, of your life, and you're starting all over from scratch. And mind you, these are the type of people that when you leave that congregation, they don't talk to you. It's like you're nobody anymore. And what's even, I think, worse is they kind of hope you fail because you left. In that way, because I've always seen that growing up, like, oh, so-and-so left, and, look at them coming back now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bad testimony on them.
Yeah, and so that's where I guess it was, and whenever we tried to talk to the pastor, like, okay, this is not, right. It was like, oh, well, I hope you find, I hope you're happy or you're successful wherever you go. But you could tell he didn't mean it. And then just walked away. Barely even made eye contact with my husband, nothing. And so from that point on, it was like us really leaning on God. Like, okay, where do we go from here?
What kind of toll did that take on your faith at that moment?
I think for me, at first, I was a little kind of in shock. Like, just like how... if they say they're Christians, how could they be so callous towards us? They've known us our whole lives, since we were babies. Like, how could they just easily turn their backs on us? And that's where I had to really rely on God, not a church, not a person. Rely on God and his word. It was the first time that I ever picked up my Bible and read a verse for myself, not because the pastor said, oh, we're going to study this verse, or a leader said, we're going to go over this section of the Bible. It was for myself. Like, picked it up and read it. Okay, I'm just going to start reading and figure out, my faith, like, where is my faith at? And from then on, it was kind of like my faith became stronger in God, because I was no longer relying on people. I was just relying on him. And that's something that I've never had before in my life, because I've always been stuck in a community of like, oh, okay, we're just basically going through the motions of a schedule for a congregation, and it wasn't, okay, I need to read my Bible because, nobody told me to. I'm just going to read. But it was more of a relationship between me and God, and me finding him myself.
Do you feel like this was a blessing in disguise?
Oh, yes. Definitely. Now that I look back and I'm like, man, there were so many times where I should have just walked away, and we would have been stronger for it, because me and my husband now, we're so much stronger than we were before. I felt like before, our foundation in Christ was more of like standing on glass, and it was kind of like a false faith, like where you're just going along. But now it's more of, no, Christ is my rock and he's where I stand. And that's what I live for. I know one day I'm going to stand before him and be in heaven and join him. Not before like, oh, it's the Bible says we'll join him. Like, no, it's I know. And so that's the difference, where it's no longer like I'm just guessing that might happen. It's a faith and a know, and I believe in it. And so that's too where when I started my business, it was like, okay, God, I'm leaning all on you, because, I'm praying that you're going to help me.
Picking up the pieces,
yeah,
and trying to put the puzzle back together.
And hoping that you're going to help me be successful in this. And I do believe he brought me to my business, because I didn't plan to start a business. Like, I wasn't even looking to start a business.
Was that ever in your mind growing up, or in high school or anything like that? What did you want to be when you grew up?
So whenever I was growing up, it was always like, I'm going to join the Air Force and I'm going to be an officer and a nurse in the Air Force. Yeah, that was like my goal.
Did you have family members, or you knew people that were in the Air Force, or how did that even come about? I'm going to be honest, because I never in my mind ever crossed like, oh, I want to join the Navy, or I want to join the Army or something like that. I didn't have anybody around me in any of those branches, and it just never dawned on me. So I'm curious to know, like, somebody, how do you get that inkling of, oh, that's, I want to go down that route?
I think it did have to do with the community that I was in, because a lot of them were retired military. My uncle was Marine, or is a Marine. So there's always kind of been that. And then we live in San Antonio, military city. Yes. So it's like, it's everywhere, but an officer in RN was so specific, because I loved the medical field. Like, that was something that I always, even if I didn't go to the Air Force, I was going to be in the medical field. And I did go to school for it. It's crazy how life happens, because I really only need like 6 classes, and I'll have my associates as an RN. And so I'll be like on my way, have all my basics.
Yeah.
And so I had my daughter, and so that's why I didn't finish.
Okay.
And then I was going to go back, and then COVID happened. So literally like 2 months, I signed up for my classes, everything, and then COVID hit. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's not meant to be. I guess God doesn't want me going that route.
Yeah.
And so as far as like business wise, like, I kind of always saw myself being like in a manager position, or like in charge of something, but never owning my own business.
Did you see anybody around you, or anybody that inspired you to be
a
business owner?
Yeah,
okay.
My grandma, she owned her own nursery shop in Pleasanton. So she had a shop like full of plants and everything for a good long while, and that was her business, and she never worked another job besides that. It was just always her plants, either selling out of her house or her shop. And so we would help her take her plants to the flea market. She would go to the Mission Flea Market, sell her plants there. And so that's kind of where that entrepreneurship came from.
And you got the full-on experience of like
from scratch.
Yeah, starting from scratch.
Yeah, she worked us, me and my older cousin. We were always either watering her plants, helping her pack up her plants in her truck. It was always something with her. And
did you ever ask her, like, Grandma, why do you do this? Or did she ever tell you,
I probably did younger, like, why do we have to do this? Or, probably complained at some point. But I always remember her being a teacher to us. Like, she always taught us things. It was never of like, oh, you have to do it. No, it was like, look, we're going to do this because, and then she would explain why, and so it's always a teaching moment for her. It was never, I need you to do this. No, it was like, can you help me? Or let's do this together. It was always about doing things together and learning together. So I think that's why I never really questioned her. Like, she was the one person that I really didn't question, because it was, oh, let's do this for fun.
There was always explanation.
Yes, there was always an explanation, or it was because she loved us. She just wanted to spend time with us. She would tell us, I just want to spend time with you. And so that's, I think, where made a difference, in my life as far as entrepreneurship, because I never saw it as a chore. I never saw it as like, oh, I got to get up early. It was actually exciting. Like, I looked forward to getting up at like 3:00 in the morning, because we got to go wait in line at the Mission Flea Market so she could get a good space.
She even tell you that aspect of the business.
Yes, that's why we're getting up early, so we can get. And sure enough, she would get like this perfect space right in the middle of the flea market, and everybody would pass her. And so it was like a good experience every time. So as far as my business, whenever I like started getting into decor, it was because of my kids. Like, I would decorate for their parties, I would do balloons. So I started a tradition with my oldest that the morning of her birthday, actual birthday, she would wake up to a balloon garland in the kitchen or in the
And where
living
did you
room.
learn how to put these things together?
I don't even
you
remember.
on your own YouTube
yeah,
or what?
I think I just kind of figured it out myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I don't even remember. For years, I've just always put the balloons together. And I started out with just blowing them myself. And then, of course, now I use a machine. But yeah, I just like started doing balloons and I got into it. And I saw how balloons just, when you add balloons to a party, it just brings it to life, you know, because there's so much color. And so I love that because my mom, she wasn't too much into like decorating our parties. So I always felt like, they're kind of plain, you know. We had a piñata, of course. We always had the piñata. But to decorate, it was kind of plain. And so I was like, you know what, like, I always wanted to do something more, like something bigger for my kids. And, you know, for me, it's decorating. And so once I started getting more into that, family members were like, you know, do you want to decorate for my baby shower? And I was like, sure. My cousins, they were like, you know, we'll pay for this stuff. Just put it together. Yeah. And so they were the first ones to invest in me, really, is they gave me the chance to decorate for their baby showers. And from then on, I just kind of took off slowly and started creating a business on its own where clients or people were like, oh, I saw your work. Oh, can you do this? By word of mouth. It was really by word of mouth the first year. And then my second year is my husband's like, okay, you need to go full time now. Like, you've been doing good. This is a business now. Like, you need to, you know, put some effort into it. I was like, oh, okay.
Was it taking on a size of like, yeah, I can still handle it on my own, or was your family needing to get involved in it too, or how did you experience this growth?
I think it was slow enough and fast enough to where once I started getting more business, my in-laws were the ones that were like, you know, we'll help you. You know, you need us to watch the kids. We'll watch the kids when you have bigger setups or they're farther away.
That right there is like the hugest help. Yes. When somebody says, I'll watch your kids, that's like, yes. you've made it
especially
already.
Especially mine, because I got 5. So for me, I was like, okay, you know what? That's all I need.
Yes.
That's literally all I need is for you to say, okay, I'm going to watch your kids. And for me, my mother-in-law, like, I trust her. Really, she's like the only one I trust with my kids. And so for her to tell me that was the confirmation that I needed. Like, okay, I can do this. And so my first ever paid job was in Canyon Lake. And so, of course, I needed to drive all the way over there. And so my husband went with me and he helped me set up and everything. And so I didn't have to worry about where my kids were going to be for like 4 hours because I had to wait around till the event was over. And they were perfectly fine. And so for me, once I had that confirmation, it was like, okay, now I'm going to do this. And I did literally everything from scratch. So my website, like my accounts, like everything. I have zero tech experience. Like, zero. Technology is like my worst enemy.
That's me too.
Yeah, like I cannot figure anything out. So I was over there, and my husband's even worse than me. So we were like trying to help figure
the blind leading the blind,
for real. So we're both trying to figure out how to, you know, create a website, do this, do that. And so now we're going into our 3rd year, and I finally got a friend of mine. Her name's Erika, and she helped me recently redo everything, like rebrand everything. So we're in the process right now of rebranding. And so for me, it's like, this is a big wow for me because I didn't see myself getting to this point. Like, of course, you, when you're a business owner, you just start, you're like, oh, I hope I can get clients. And then you get clients or customers. And then now it's like, oh yes, like I have a clientele, I have customers. I hope I can, you know, do bigger events or do bigger things. And you finally get to that point and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm here. Like, how did I get here? Like, how did I do this? Because it's so, like, the process, you're just trying to survive sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to stay afloat. And once you finally get to a point of success. You're like, wow, like I'm here, like I've done it. And that's not to say like I don't still have times where I don't have business. Like there are times where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my water bill.
Crickets.
Like, how am I going to make my car payment? Like, it's just those things, like, part of business. And that's where I say, like, my faith is all leaning on God, because I'm like, okay. And I can tell you, like, he's never disappointed me. Like, Christ has never disappointed me, because literally the day before a bill is due, or like the day before I have something due, it's like I get a job, or my husband gets a job, and it's like everything's taken care of. And yeah, I may not have extravagant things, I may not have like the latest tech or the latest this or that, but I know everything's taken care of. Yeah. Like my family is okay, we're okay, and we're blessed. And I think too, as Americans, we're so used to being spoiled. Like, we don't realize how rich we are and how blessed we are, especially here in America. Like, that's one thing too. Like, my grandmother, she always blessed us. Like, didn't matter what she had, how much she had, she always made sure to teach us, like, even if it's something small, it comes from the heart. Like, if I'm giving you something, it's because I love you, not because I just want to spoil you, but because I love you. And she would give us sometimes the smallest gifts, but it was like she put so much thought into it. Like, we could tell she spent hours at JCPenney's trying to decide what blouse we would like or something. And that's just, something that I've taken from her, especially now that I'm older, and like I try to be that way. And she taught me so much now that she's gone. It's like my husband's like, you say that about everything that reminds you of your grandma. Everything reminds you about your grandma. And I'm like, well, yeah, because she taught me everything. Like both my grandmas were very big influences in my life. And so I think that's what, made me the way that I am, or made me who I am, is because I was blessed to have that, two good teachers, because my other grandma was a good teacher as well. Both of them taught me how to sew. One taught me how to cook. The other one, she was a seamstress on her own. Like, she could create clothes. She would sew up clothes for us as we were kids, like whole outfits. And she even made some for my kids when they were babies. So she taught me how to do that. So when I was in middle school, I actually did make a couple pieces of clothing, because she would teach me, okay, look like this measurements. And she taught me how to use the sewing machine. And then my other grandma taught me how to cook, so I knew how to cook.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I'm so blessed.
You had such powerful relationships with these important figures in your life. Your mom, your grandmother, your both your grandmothers. How do you feel like these relationships influenced the way that you are now as a mother with your children?
Both my grandmas were very, one of them was a very strong disciplinary, because she had mostly boys. So my dad's mom, there is 5 boys and 1 girl on his side. And so, she was a single mom. And so my grandfather passed away when my dad was 13. So he didn't really have his dad in his life. So she was a single mom. She had to raise all these boys. And so she was very strong in discipline. Versus my other grandma, my mom's mom, she was like, no, just let them be kids. Like, don't get after. I remember getting after my daughter. I forgot what she was doing. She was little. And I think I was getting after her, telling her to behave. And my grandma was like, no, don't tell her anything. No le dices nada. And I'm like, Grandma, she's like over here destroying things. Like,
how am I not going to
she's
like,
like,
tell her
no,
anything?
Déjala. And she would always tell me. And I'm like, okay. So me and my husband, we were like, we learned early on kids are going to be kids, and it's not helping them to be on them or not allowing them to be kids, you know? I think too, like, as a mom, learning how to teach my kids instead of just get after them or discipline. It's being a teacher to them. You know, that's one thing where I'm learning as I get older, like, no, I need to teach my children, not, you know, expect them to know certain things, because they're kids. They don't know. Like, we as parents, they're watching us. They're expecting to learn from us. And I think, especially too, as business owners, we get so busy and we forget that they're watching us, and we forget that they're looking to us to learn. And it's funny because my daughter, like, she sees me running my business and she's like, I'm going to make a business and I'm going to do dog treats. I was like, what? Dog treats? Like, where did that come from?
But that's awesome that she's already,
yeah.
you know, thinking about it, brainstorming
Yes.
what her business could be. Like, my daughter, I think she started out with, when we used to have the trailer, she would say that she was going to have her own trailer too, but hers was going to be sweets. She wanted to sell all kinds of sweets. And then I think lately, the last that I heard is that she's going to be a business owner, but she's going to have a pet shop. That's what she wants to have.
Aww.
A pet shop.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. She's 6 years old, but she's already brainstorming. Like, the other day we were in the car and she was asking me, Mom, so where do I get the pets from for my store? Like, who do I have to talk to? Like, she was asking me like that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? It's something that we're going to have to look up because
Yeah.
I have no idea. I really
like, I
don't know.
know.
Where do you get pets from for a pet store? But yeah, the wheels are already turning, you know,
Yeah.
and she's thinking about that. So those same 3 relationships that we just mentioned, how did they influence you as a business owner, as a woman in business and entrepreneurship?
I think my grandma that had her own shop and everything, she influenced me in a way to just go for it. You know, just do it. You know, don't be afraid to chase your dreams or do something that you never thought you would be able to do. Because for her, just stepping out and doing something she loved, she didn't even give it a second thought. She was so confident in it. It was just like, I'm going to do it. I don't care who tells me no, like, I'm going to do it. And it's funny because my uncle, she kind of got my uncle to help her run her shop, and my aunt to help her run her shop. And I think they were reluctant to do it at first, but she was like, no, like, I'm going to do it whether you want me to or not. So you're either going to do it with me or you're going to, you know, not
watch me do it.
Yeah. And so they pretty much were like, okay, we're going to help you. So that's where I think she gives me that confidence, or I learned to have that confidence in myself, because that's a big struggle that I've had growing up, is like having that confidence. Like, oh, can I do it? Like,
are they going to like it? Isn't anybody
Yes.
going to buy it?
Yeah.
I think those thoughts go through all of us. Anybody who has a business.
Yes. Like, should I do that? Like, I don't even know. Like, will this look good? I don't know. Like, and so that's where I've tried to get that confidence. And as far as like my dad's mom, it was more structure in taking care of yourself and self-care. That's one thing. Every time she would see me, it was like, take care of yourself. Like, and I think she learned that because she was a single mom and like always working. She never had time for herself until she got older and all her kids were grown up. She was the one that would teach me, go get your hair done. You know, buy whatever you want to take care of yourself. If you want this expensive shampoo, buy it. It's for you. And she was always that way. You like this perfume, and she had her specific perfumes, her makeup, her specific brands that she liked. And if they were pricey, oh well, you know.
The way you present yourself, though, is what she was trying to make it important to you, that the way you present yourself is how people are going to view you and how they're going to respond to you. Yeah.
And I think too, she saw, like, my mom, I think she struggled a lot with depression growing up. And like, I didn't notice it because I was a kid. But now that I'm older and I look back and I'm like, I can recognize that. I can recognize what that was. And I think she saw that in my mom and was trying to instill in me, like, value yourself, you know, take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. And because of that, that's now like you sometimes you'll get that mom guilt where you're like, oh, I shouldn't spend this on myself. Like, I really probably should save that money. But it's always that voice in my head of my grandma. She'd always tell me, Nina, take care of yourself. And so I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to take care of myself. And so that's where I think those voices influenced me so much.
And they're still so present.
Yes, they're still so present in me. And that's, I think, too, like how I remember them. It's like, okay, they left that legacy in me, and I'm going to pass it on to my daughters and my kids. Whatever they want to do in life, I'm going to teach them to be confident. I'm going to teach them to take care of themselves, be presentable, love yourself. Don't let people put you down or devalue you. And I think that's the biggest thing that they, instilled in me. And even all of those good qualities that they instilled in me, it was always, okay, your foundation is in God. At the end of it all, your faith is in Him, and that's where I believe, like, my faith, it never really truly wavered. Like, I always believed in God because I had those examples of, even through everything, whatever life would throw at my grandmothers, their faith was still in God. And so that's where that confidence in everything has came from for me. Even so now as a mom, it's like, no, I was meant for this. Like, God bless me with this many children, and like, these children are my legacy. And like, if they want to continue my business when they get older, they can continue it, or they can build something else. But I'm going to give them the tools that they need to build whatever they want to.
It's been 3 years since you launched Olive Party Creations.
Mm-hmm.
So far, what has been your most proudest accomplishment? Is there one? Is there two? Is there three? What are you the most proud of right now in this day?
I'd have to say my clientele relationships. Like, that is the biggest goal that I have, is to make my clients a lasting relationship. Not just like, oh, I'm going to do one event and that's it and I'm going to forget about you. No, I want to actually create a relationship to where I know you personally and I want to continue doing your events for the years to come. I would have to say, like, my most proudest moment would have to be an event that we did for a friend of my mother-in-law's, and it was her birthday, and my mother-in-law wanted to gift her one of our setups, and she was like, she loves balloons, I want y'all guys to do a setup for her. So we ended up doing 2 setups. And when she came in, it was like, she was so in shock. She was so happy that she actually cried. And I was like, oh, I didn't know somebody could be that happy about balloons.
Did you start getting teary-eyed too?
Yeah, it was like, she made me so happy that she was like, I brought so much joy to her, and I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think I was capable of bringing that much joy to a person.
That was the moment that you realized your impact and the impact that your business has on other people.
Yes. And that was whenever it really solidified, okay, this is what I was meant to do. Like, I'm in the right place. Like, this is where I want to be, For me, she was so grateful. She was so happy about it. She ended up helping us do one of our bridal extravaganzas that we did. And she works in sales. So she was like, let me help you make some sales. And I was like, okay, like, if you want to. And then one of the directors in charge of the extravaganza, one of his tips was like, if you have a client that's so happy about y'all's work, let them tell everyone. And I was like, okay, like, that that'll work out for us. And I was so happy in return that she would be so blessed by our setup that she would want to help us in our business. She would want to help us expand our business or get more clientele. And that was what made me, I guess, so proud and so happy at that moment. And it was like, okay, now I found a new goal. My goal is every setup that I do to throw my heart and my best into it to where I get that reaction every single time. Like, that is my goal, to make sure every single client I have is that happy that it brings tears to their eyes. Like, that's where I want to be. It doesn't matter if it's a small setup or, the biggest setup I've ever done. Like, I want it to bring that amount of joy to that person no matter what.
Nina, thank you so much for coming and opening up and sharing with us. For those who are listening to you for the first time and learning about your business, what kind of services do you offer and how do they hire you? Let's get you booked.
So we offer all decor. So we're getting in the wedding industry. We do corporate events as well. So you can find me at olivepartycreations.com or on Instagram. You can message me there. So we're pretty much all over the place. So even TikTok and Facebook, of course. So if just find me on any of those platforms and message me, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Again, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for listening, for watching. Remember, please follow us on our social media. Also visit us inside Savage Coffee, located at Boeing Center at Techport.